A colossal stone structure stands frozen in time, abandoned for thousands of years. This is the world of the unfinished monument, and it holds secrets modern archaeology is only beginning to understand. By the end of our journey, you will see these ancient sites not as failures, but as the world's most revealing engineering laboratories. What catastrophic flaw forced builders to walk away from a single stone taller than a 10-story building? And what can a quarry full of half-sculpted giants tell us about a society's sudden collapse? These silent stones challenge everything we assume about the past. What forgotten story of human ambition do you think is waiting to be told? That single stone taller than a 10-story building is a perfect example. It was abandoned mid-creation, a snapshot of ambition interrupted. So what separates a simple abandoned project from a true unfinished monument? The distinction lies in the frozen moment. An unfinished monument is a project halted at a specific, identifiable stage of construction. It is not merely a messy building site. It is a deliberate pause that became permanent, preserving the methods, tools, and sometimes even the mistakes of its creators for thousands of years. Walk through such a site and you will find raw materials still locked in the quarry, giant blocks only partially freed from the bedrock, and earthen ramps built to move them that were never taken down. These places are unique time capsules. A finished pyramid or temple shows you only the final, polished product, a perfect facade that hides all the effort it took to get there. But an unfinished monument shows you the messy, brilliant, and difficult journey. It reveals the engineering laboratory in full swing. This frozen state allows us to do something remarkable. We can reverse engineer the entire construction process. By examining a block that cracked while being shaped, we understand the limits of their tools. By studying a ramp left in place, we can deduce the ingenious systems they used to move unimaginable weight. These silent workshops let us infer the intended final form and the precise technological path the builders were following, a path that was suddenly and mysteriously abandoned. This sets the stage for our first deep dive into one of the most profound examples, a place where the dreams of an entire civilization are carved into a mountainside, yet never realized. That very crack in the granite is a story written in stone. The unfinished obelisk of Aswan lies exactly as its creators left it, still partially attached to the bedrock of the quarry. It offers a perfect, almost surgical view into the methods of ancient engineers. This was not a simple block they were cutting. It was designed to be a needle of solid red granite, intended to reach a height of nearly 42 meters. If you stand beside it today, you are looking at what would have been the heaviest single stone monument ever attempted by the civilization, a true test of their limits. The entire site is an open-air classroom. You can still see the precise trenches carved by teams of workers who used nothing more than handheld stones made of dolerite, a material harder than granite, to painstakingly pound away the bedrock channel by channel. This was a process of incredible patience and physical exertion, not brute force. But then the flaw appeared. A deep fracture ran through the stone, a catastrophic failure that occurred during the final stages of freeing it from the earth. This single structural imperfection rendered the entire project impossible. It was a risk the builders always faced, a gamble with the very substance of the earth. They had invested an immense amount of labor and resources, only to be halted by the hidden character of the stone itself. This site shows us that their ambition was sometimes matched and overcome by the unforgiving nature of their materials. It is a humbling reminder that even the most powerful ancient societies were in a constant dialogue with the physical world, a dialogue that sometimes ended in a silent, permanent standstill. That profound understanding of material properties is written into the very floor of the Aswan quarry. To extract a monolith destined to become an obelisk, ancient engineers began with a plan of remarkable precision. Teams of workers would first carve deep, narrow trenches directly into the red granite, channels just wide enough for a single person to stand and work. This defined the shape of the future giant, isolating it from the surrounding bedrock. Their primary tools were not chisels in the way we imagine, but heavy, hand-held balls made of dolerite. This stone is significantly harder than the granite they were quarrying. The method was not one of slicing or sawing. It was a process of controlled destruction. Workers would raise these dolerite pounders and drop them over and over onto the granite floor of the trench. Each impact created a small crater, and over countless impacts, these craters would connect, slowly and laboriously fracturing the stone along a clean, predetermined line. The evidence of this exhausting work is still there today. By measuring the length of the trenches and counting the number of tool marks, researchers can estimate the staggering man-hours required. One calculation suggests that a single team might have needed to deliver millions of blows to free just one obelisk. This highlights a fundamental principle of ancient engineering. It was not about overpowering nature with force, but about patiently persuading the stone to break where they wanted it to, using a deep, intuitive knowledge of its brittle character. This hands-on, percussive genius would soon face an even greater challenge, one that required moving these stone giants across the landscape. But the ambition of Aswan pales in comparison to the scale of a quarry in Lebanon. At Baalbek, the Romans undertook a building project of almost incomprehensible magnitude. The site is famous for its Temple of Jupiter, which rests upon a massive platform. 3 of the foundation stones in this platform, known as the trilithon, are each a colossal block weighing over 800 tons. To visualize that, imagine moving 3 fully loaded jumbo jets carved from a single piece of limestone and then positioning them with perfect precision. Yet the true testament to their ambition lies not in what they finished, but in what they left behind. Just a short distance from the temple complex, in the main quarry, rests the stone of the pregnant woman. This is not a simple block. It is a true megalith, an unfinished giant that was partially cut from the living rock and then abandoned. Its estimated weight is a staggering 1,650 tons. That is heavier than most modern naval warships. This single stone forces us to completely reconsider the limits of ancient logistics. The question here shifts from how they shaped the stone, which was a feat in itself, to a far more complex puzzle. How did they ever plan to move it? The block is so immense that its very existence suggests the Roman engineers possessed a transport technology or a method of organized labor that remains lost to us. The quarry floor offers a few clues. Deeply cut pathways and clear areas for leverage suggest a system of rollers, ropes, and immense manpower was envisioned. But the project was ultimately abandoned, leaving this giant in its cradle. This unfinished stone is a silent challenge, daring us to solve a logistical puzzle that even the mighty Romans might not have been able to complete. Moving a stone that weighed more than 1,000 tons was a problem of almost mythical proportions. The intended journey for the giant at Baalbek was not a long one, perhaps only a single kilometer from the quarry to the temple foundation. Yet that short distance represented a monumental task. Think of the immense, coordinated effort required. The most plausible theories point to a system of immense wooden sledges resting on a track of lubricated wooden rollers. Teams of hundreds, perhaps even thousands of workers would have been needed to pull on enormous ropes, while other crews used massive levers to inch the sledge forward. adjusting its path by a fraction of an inch at a time. The ground itself would have been a critical part of the machine, carefully prepared and potentially wetted with water or oil to reduce the catastrophic friction. Every movement would have been a calculated risk, a battle against the sheer inertia of the stone. The fact that the largest block was abandoned right in the quarry speaks volumes. It suggests the builders finally met a physical limit, a weight threshold where their established methods, no matter how many people they employed, simply stopped working. The stone was too heavy to even begin its journey. This logistical ceiling is not a mark of failure, but a crucial data point. It gives us a clear measurement of the absolute limits of pre-industrial organization and manpower. It shows us the precise moment when ambition outpaced practical capability, leaving behind a stone that stands as a permanent monument to a challenge that even the mighty Romans could not solve. Deep underground, another kind of workshop reveals a different engineering challenge. The Serapeum of Saqqara is a vast network of tunnels and chambers, a final resting place for the sacred Apis bulls of ancient Egypt. Here, lining the dark corridors, are colossal sarcophagi carved from a single, hard stone like granite or basalt. Each one is a polished masterpiece of precision, but a few stand out as starkly different. These unfinished boxes, some weighing as much as 70 tons, were left in various stages of completion, abandoned in the very chambers they were meant to occupy. Their surfaces are not smooth and perfect. Instead, they are covered in the clear, straight grooves left by tubular drills and the rough chisel marks from their initial shaping. They are missing their final polish, and most tellingly, they lack their heavy, fitted lids. This state of partial completion is a crucial clue. It suggests that the creation of these giant stone containers was not a separate process done in a distant workshop. The evidence points to a system of concurrent construction, where the sarcophagi were being shaped and finished right inside the tombs, even as the tunnels themselves were being excavated around them. This was an assembly line of the monumental, an attempt to streamline a hugely complex logistical operation. So why were these particular boxes left unfinished? The answer is not written in a cracked stone, but perhaps in a shift in tradition, a change in religious practice, or even a simple miscalculation in the project's timeline could have halted work on these specific sarcophagi. Their abandonment shows us that even within a successful, long-running project, experimental approaches to mass-producing objects of such immense scale and precision could be suddenly paused, leaving behind these silent, half-formed giants as a testament to a process interrupted. The surfaces of those unfinished sarcophagi are a technical manuscript written in stone. They reveal an industrial process of incredible sophistication, centered on one key innovation, the tubular drill. This was not a simple chisel. Evidence suggests these were likely hollow tubes made of copper, spun back and forth while a thick slurry of abrasive sand and water was fed under pressure into the cutting edge. This simple combination of a soft metal and a hard abrasive became a machine capable of slicing through solid granite. You can still see the perfect, circular grooves these tools left behind, each one a testament to a steady, patient, and powerful application of force. The precision is what truly astonishes. By studying the spacing and depth of these drill marks, we can reconstruct their entire workflow. The outer surfaces of the sarcophagus would first be roughed out with heavy pounders, much like at Aswan. Then, teams of workers would use these tubular drills to create a series of closely spaced, deep holes. The material between the holes was then fractured away, bringing the stone closer to its final, smooth shape. This was a subtractive process of immense control, a method for mass-producing near-identical objects of staggering weight and complexity. This pushes our understanding of their entire industrial base. To create drills large and durable enough for such work required advanced metallurgy and a deep, practical knowledge of material science. They were not just cutting stone, they were experimenting with the very limits of their technology, developing a specialized manufacturing process for these singular, sacred objects. Each unfinished box is a frozen moment in that experiment, a direct look at a workshop pushing the boundaries of what was possible with copper, sand, and human ingenuity. The volcanic slopes of Rono Roroku present a scene of ghostly industry. Nearly 400 stone figures stand, lean, and lie in a state of suspended animation, a community of giants caught between creation and completion. This is not a single abandoned monument, but an entire factory floor frozen at the very moment its workers departed. The sheer number of moai in every conceivable stage offers a step-by-step guide to their creation, a process far more complex than simply carving a face. We can trace their entire journey, beginning with the initial outline, a graceful curve sketched directly onto the cliff face. The sculptors worked from the top down, a counterintuitive but logical approach. They would first shape the head and elongated ears, then the arms and torso, all while the statue's back remained firmly fused to the volcanic tuff of the mountain. This method provided stability throughout the carving process, preventing the fragile figure from cracking under its own weight before it was fully formed. The final step was the most dramatic, severing that last connection along the spine. Deep, narrow channels were carved, leaving only a sturdy stone keel running down the back, a final tether that would be broken when the statue was ready for its journey. This quarry is an unparalleled record, a complete production cycle halted. The reasons for this mass abandonment are woven into the island's ecological fabric. Research suggests that a combination of deforestation and the pressures on resources created immense social challenges for the community. This led to a shift in cultural focus and a gradual cessation of the statue-building tradition. The moai, in their hundreds of unfinished states, are therefore more than just statues. They are the final, silent chapter of a society's story, a poignant record of a brilliant artistic and engineering output that came to a profound and lasting stop. The scattered statues along the ancient roads of Easter Island are not just fallen giants. They are the visible results of a massive, ongoing engineering experiment. Each moai that lies face down on the transport route is a preserved moment of a specific challenge. A slight miscalculation in balance, an unexpected soft patch of earth, or a rope reaching its breaking point could bring a multi-ton statue crashing down, halting its journey forever. These pathways became open-air laboratories where the islanders tested the limits of physics and their own ingenuity. The mystery of how they moved these colossal figures has sparked fascinating theories, each supported by clues left behind. One compelling idea, drawn from local oral history and tested by modern researchers, suggests the statues were made to walk. Teams of workers using a complex system of ropes could have rocked the moai from side to side, carefully shifting its center of gravity with each tilt. This rocking motion would have made the statue appear to shuffle forward, a slow and deliberate dance across the landscape. Other evidence points to more conventional, yet still monumental, methods. The use of wooden sledges gliding on tracks of felled trees is another strong possibility, a system that would have required immense coordination and a steady supply of timber. Each fallen statue along the route adds a piece of data to this ancient puzzle. One might have tipped because its base was not perfectly flat for the walking method. Another might have cracked the rollers beneath a sledge, proving that particular path was too rough. These were not mere accidents. They were learning experiences, albeit costly ones, in a grand trial and error process to solve one of history's most difficult logistical problems. The very existence of these road-bound giants confirms that the methods were not yet perfected, that the islanders were actively refining their techniques, pushing their technology and their environment to the absolute edge. That stark contrast between ambition and reality is etched into the very shape of a pyramid in Abusia. The monument intended for Pharaoh Neferufer stands as a powerful lesson in how the most carefully laid plans of an entire civilization could be undone by a single, unpredictable event. Unlike the Moai, this was not a slow decline in output. This was a project stopped in its tracks. Neferufer's pyramid was meant to be a classic, smooth-sided structure, a permanent stairway to the heavens for a divine king. But the pharaoh's reign was unexpectedly short, a matter of only a few years. His passing left the construction site in a state of urgent adaptation. The builders had only managed to complete the massive stone core, a single tier of the Grand Pyramid that was envisioned. The upper levels, the gleaming casing stones, the surrounding temple complex, all of it remained in the realm of blueprint and intention. Faced with this new reality, the royal architects did not simply walk away. They performed a kind of architectural triage. The existing base structure was hastily converted into a square, flat-topped mastaba tomb, a far more modest final resting place. This quick transformation is incredibly revealing. It shows us that the ritual need for a proper burial superseded the grand architectural plan. The pyramid's unfinished state acts like an open book, clearly displaying the standard construction sequence of the era. Work began deep underground with the burial chamber and substructure, ensuring the king's eternal home was secure first. Only then would the teams begin the slow process of building the massive superstructure upwards, layer by layer. Neferufer's monument, therefore, is not a story of engineering failure. It is a story of a timeline cut short. It demonstrates that even within a 500-year tradition of pyramid building, where the methods were perfected and the workforce was supremely skilled, an individual project could become a unique experiment, one whose final form was ultimately dictated not by stone or rope, but by the immutable turning of fate. The abrupt halt of Neferufer's pyramid reveals a vulnerability far greater than any engineering flaw, the fragility of political power itself. A single royal succession could dismantle a project that had consumed years of planning and labor. The entire state machinery, from the overseers to the quarry crews, would pivot overnight. Their work was no longer directed toward the memory of the past king, but toward securing the legacy of the new one. This was not merely a change in management, it was a complete and instantaneous reallocation of a nation's wealth and manpower. The unfinished monument thus becomes a historical seismograph, recording the precise moment a dynasty was shaken by a sudden death, a contested throne, or the outbreak of conflict. We see this pattern echoed far beyond the Nile Valley. In the Americas, immense earthen mounds were left half-finished, their construction halted by shifts in leadership or regional instability. In the ancient Near East, the foundations of colossal palaces were abandoned when a conquering army arrived, their grand blueprints rendered meaningless by a change in regime. These sites are powerful reminders that the stone itself was only one part of the equation. The true foundation of any ancient megaproject was a stable, continuous flow of authority and resources. When that political current was disrupted, the grandest visions could vanish, leaving behind only a skeleton of stone as a testament to the volatile intersection of human ambition and the relentless turn of history. Across the world, in the tropical river basins of Costa Rica, an entirely different kind of workshop challenges our ideas of ancient precision. The Dikwis spheres are a collection of hundreds of stone balls, some as large as a small car, scattered across the landscape. Many are breathtakingly perfect, smooth spheres that seem almost machined, but the true key to understanding them lies with their imperfect cousins, the spheres that were never finished. These rough outs were discovered still nestled in their quarries, partially attached to the bedrock of riverbanks, forever caught between the raw stone and the perfect form. They were shaped from tough materials like gabbro, limestone, and sandstone, and their creation was a masterclass in patience. The process began with selecting a large boulder that had the right internal structure, free of hidden cracks or flaws. Using only other, harder stones as tools, the sculptors would then begin the painstaking work of pecking away at the surface, striking it countless times to slowly remove material and define a rough, blocky shape that approximated a sphere. An unfinished sphere is a frozen snapshot of this multi-stage transformation. You can see the initial, jagged form slowly being ground down through abrasion. Workers would have used sand and water with stone grinders, painstakingly wearing down the high points, rotating the sphere constantly to maintain its symmetry. This was not a quick process. It was a slow, deliberate dance between the artisan and the stone, a dialogue that could take generations to complete for the largest examples. The spheres abandoned in the quarries tell a silent story of this rigorous selection process. A hidden fracture, a change in the stone's density, or simply a miscalculation in the initial shape could render a sphere impossible to perfect. These rejects were left behind, proving that the journey from a rough boulder to a perfect sphere was a difficult one, where only the most suitable stones earned the right to be completed. Their ultimate purpose, whether for astronomical alignment, social status, or spiritual meaning, remains one of archaeology's great debates, but the unfinished stones speak a clearer language. They tell us that the creators were not just artists, but rigorous quality control managers, engaged in a constant experiment to find harmony between their grand vision and the unyielding character of the earth. That journey from a rough stone to a perfect sphere was a battle of millimeters fought with simple tools. The Dikwi's artisans were mastering applied geometry without any written formulas or precision instruments. Their method was one of relentless, patient verification. They likely used lengths of cord or simple wooden calipers to constantly measure the diameter from every conceivable angle, searching for any deviation from the ideal roundness. When a high spot was found, they would grind it down with abrasive sand and water, then measure again. This cycle of measure and correct, repeated over countless days, was how they persuaded the stone into a perfect form. Some of the unfinished spheres tell an even more fascinating story. They are not rough lumps, but show distinct flat planes, like the facets of a giant gemstone. This suggests a brilliant step-by-step process. The sculptors may have first carved the boulder into a complex polyhedron, a shape with many flat sides that roughly approximated a sphere. This geometric intermediate stage would have given them clear, straight lines to work with, making it easier to maintain symmetry. Only after this angular form was perfected would they begin the final, painstaking work of rounding off every edge and plane, transforming the angular mathematical shape into a seamless, organic whole. This entire endeavor was a monumental experiment in trial and error. Every abandoned sphere represents a test that failed. A hidden crack might spread as the stone was thinned, or a miscalculation in the initial faceting could make the final round shape impossible to achieve without the sphere becoming lopsided. These discarded stones were their quality control, the ones that did not meet the impossibly high standard. They teach us that the creators were not just making art, they were enforcing a rigid, almost sacred geometry upon the unyielding earth, and they were willing to walk away from any stone that refused to obey. The pursuit of perfect geometry found in the Dikwi spheres stands in stark contrast to a site where the very meaning of the stones was rewritten by their creators. In the highlands of Turkey, the Göbekli Tepe complex presents a mystery of a different nature. This is not a story of a project halted by a cracked stone or a fallen king, but one of a conscious and ceremonial end. The oldest parts of the site, known as Layer 3, consist of spectacular circular enclosures dominated by massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing over 20 tons. These structures are not merely old, they are foundational, dating back over 11,000 years. Yet, the most astonishing fact is not their construction, but their deconstruction. At a certain point in time, the people who built this sacred place made a deliberate decision. They did not abandon it to the elements. Instead, they gathered vast amounts of earth and stone and carefully, methodically, backfilled the entire complex, burying their own magnificent creation to preserve it for eternity. This act of intentional burial is what allowed the site to survive in such a remarkable state of preservation, waiting for millennia to be rediscovered. But the story does not end with this ritual entombment. Archaeologists have found tantalizing clues that an even more ambitious phase of construction was envisioned. The plans for what is called the B project involved enclosures with pillars of a scale that would have dwarfed the already colossal ones we see today. Quarry areas and prepared foundations hint at a vision that was never realized. The decision to backfill the site, rather than continue building toward this new, grander vision, is the central puzzle. This was not a failure of engineering or logistics. It was a profound cultural shift. The community made a conscious choice to terminate their grand experiment in megalithic construction. They sealed their old world, their ancestral meeting grounds, under a protective layer of soil. This suggests a transformation in their belief system, a turning away from the old ways and the old gods. The unfinished B project, therefore, is a ghost of a future that never was. A silent testament to a society that chose to preserve its past rather than build upon it, leaving behind a buried temple that speaks volumes about the power of symbolic thought in the human story. Göbekli Tepe's buried pillars point to a revolution not of stone but of society itself. This was more than a temple. It was one of humanity's first large-scale social experiments. Before cities, before kings, and long before written history, the builders of this complex achieved something astounding. They were not farmers tied to the land, but hunter-gatherers who came together season after season, drawn by a shared vision. The true monument was not just the carved limestone, but the invisible organization required to sustain the workforce. Someone had to coordinate the hunting parties to feed hundreds of people. Others had to manage the quarries, the toolmakers, and the teams hauling 20-ton pillars. This level of coordination for a non-utilitarian, spiritual project suggests a social structure far more complex than we ever assumed for people of that era. The construction of Göbekli Tepe may have actually been the catalyst that forced this new way of living into existence. To feed so many concentrated workers, the community might have started cultivating wild grasses nearby, creating a reliable food source that allowed the project to continue. This is the profound irony of the site. The very act of building this sacred place could have planted the seeds for the agricultural revolution that would eventually make the hunter-gatherer way of life and the social model that built Göbekli Tepe obsolete. The decision to deliberately bury the entire complex and to abandon the plans for even larger enclosures then becomes deeply symbolic. It marks the end of an era. The society that once gathered for seasonal rituals was transforming into something new, something settled and permanently anchored to cultivated fields. The unfinished B project is therefore a fossilized turning point. It captures the moment a grand social experiment in collective action reached its natural conclusion, having successfully engineered not just a circle of pillars, but the very future of humanity. The two colossi of Memnon stand as lonely sentinels in the Theban plains, their silent gaze fixed on a landscape that has forgotten the world they once guarded. These seated giants depicting Pharaoh Amenhotep III are all that remains of the largest mortuary temple complex ever constructed in ancient Egypt. Yet their imposing scale is deceptive. They are merely the entrance gate, the sole surviving fragments of a vision so grand its loss feels almost incomprehensible. Where they now sit was once the threshold to an empire in stone. Behind them stretched a sprawling city of pillars, courtyards, and sanctuaries, a domain covering nearly 86 acres. Today, that domain has vanished. All that is left are outlines traced in the sand by archaeologists, ghostly floor plans of halls that reached for the sky, and a scattering of shattered statues. The temple did not simply fade away. It was likely brought down by a powerful earthquake, a force of nature against which even the most stable stone architecture could not stand. The initial destruction was then compounded over centuries as later rulers, from the pharaohs of the New Kingdom to the Roman emperors, systematically quarried the site. They saw the fallen temple not as a sacred ruin to be preserved, but as a convenient and high-quality quarry, ready to supply stone for their own monuments and cities. This is a different kind of unfinished story. It is not about a project halted during construction, but about a completed masterpiece whose life was cut short and whose potential for renewal was forever erased. The failure to rebuild this temple was not a matter of forgotten techniques. It was a testament to a shifting political and economic landscape, where the resources required for such a colossal restoration were diverted to new projects and new pharaohs. The colossi, therefore, represent a profound truth. An unfinished state can be a final state, not because the builders walked away, but because time itself, through disaster and the relentless repurposing of the past, decided that the story was over. The ground itself could turn against the grandest of plans. A sudden tremor, a river changing its course, or a prolonged drought represented a force that no amount of human ingenuity could permanently ward off. The probable fate of Amenhotep III's temple, likely toppled by a massive earthquake, illustrates how a single night of tremors could erase centuries of work. But the damage was more than just physical. For a culture that saw its temples as bridges to the divine, such a catastrophe was not merely bad luck. It could be interpreted as a profound sign of disfavor, a message from the gods that the site itself was now cursed or unworthy. This psychological blow, this loss of faith, could be enough for a community to ritually abandon a place forever, believing it was better left to the sands than to risk further divine anger. Beyond the spiritual crisis lay a brutal, practical reality. A major disaster did not just shake the stones of a monument, it shattered the very foundation of the society that built it. The same event that destroyed a temple would have also devastated cities, farms, and irrigation systems. The resulting loss of life, the collapse of the food supply, and the breakdown of trade networks would cripple the economy. The vast, organized labor force needed to clear the rubble and begin reconstruction would simply no longer exist, its members now struggling for their own survival. These sites, therefore, become sobering monuments to a different kind of experiment. They are not case studies in failed engineering, but in the ultimate vulnerability of human systems to the unpredictable power of the natural world. They remind us that our ancestors were not just building with stone, they were building against time, climate, and the very slow, grinding movement of the earth, forces that could patiently wait for the perfect moment to reclaim what was theirs. The scattered stones of an unfinished Nurak tell a story of continuous innovation. These Bronze Age towers of Sardinia are not a collection of identical structures. but a 1,000-year-long conversation in stone, a visible record of a culture experimenting with its own architectural language. The earliest towers were simpler, single structures, often built with large, roughly shaped blocks. But as the centuries passed, the designs grew bolder and more intricate. Builders began connecting multiple towers with massive curtaining walls, creating sprawling, fortress-like complexes with internal courtyards and labyrinthine passages. This was not a static tradition. It was a living, evolving practice of engineering. The evidence for this constant refinement is found in the sites that were never completed. At these locations, you can find stacks of prepared building stones still lying where the workers left them, waiting to be hoisted into place. In other cases, a wall stands only partially built, its height far shorter than the clearly intended design, frozen mid-construction. These are not failures, they are paused experiments. Each unfinished nurag represents a specific moment where the builders were testing a new design for a defensive bastion or a new method for corbelling a roof chamber. They were actively refining their techniques, generation after generation, learning from what worked and what did not. Why would a community walk away from such a substantial investment? The reasons are as practical as they are profound. A local conflict might have made a specific hilltop too vulnerable, forcing a sudden relocation. The nearby forests that provided timber for ramps and scaffolding could have been depleted. Or perhaps the community's needs simply changed, and the social drive that fueled such collective labor shifted toward other pursuits. These abandoned sites are therefore more than just ruined towers. They are a physical timeline of a society's priorities, showing a culture in a long, deliberate dialogue with its own security and identity. A dialogue that eventually fell silent, leaving its final, unspoken ideas resting in quarried stone. Those stacks of stone left beside unfinished towers are a silent conversation about defense. Each nurag design was a live hypothesis, a test of how best to protect a community in a rugged landscape. By comparing a completed fortress with one that was abandoned mid-construction, we can literally see their strategic thinking evolving in stone. The height of a tower, the thickness of its walls, the clever angles of a narrow entrance passage, these were not arbitrary choices. They were principles being refined through hard-won experience. An unfinished site with its foundation clearly marked and its lower walls in place is like an open blueprint. It reveals the initial grand plan before the realities of construction or a shifting threat forced a change in direction. Perhaps the builders discovered that a planned wall was simply too thin to withstand a siege, or that a corridor's layout created a fatal blind spot for defenders. Maybe the sheer effort of hauling stones to achieve a desired height proved unsustainable, forcing a redesign. These sites are not failures, they are a record of a culture actively learning, adapting its architectural language in response to a changing world. The silent stones tell a story of continuous experimentation, where each generation built upon the lessons and sometimes the mistakes of the last. High in the Andes, the abandoned stones of Ollantaytambo tell a story of a journey cut short. The fortress itself is a masterpiece of Inca engineering, with colossal walls made of interlocking blocks that fit together with breathtaking precision. But to understand the true scale of their ambition, you must look away from the finished walls and toward the nearby quarry. There, and scattered along the rugged path leading to the site, lie enormous granite blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, that never reached their destination. These are not raw material. They are partially shaped monoliths already on the move, frozen in transit for 500 years. Their positions along the route are like data points on a map of a grand logistical operation, one that was violently and permanently interrupted. The challenge these engineers faced was immense. Their intended path was not a flat, straight road. It required moving these giants across the turbulent Yorubamba River and then up a steep, terraced mountainside to the fortress high above. Each block represents a monumental effort in motion, a testament to a system of ramps, rollers, levers, and immense human coordination. The presence of so many blocks in various stages of transport paints a clear picture. Ollantaytambo was not a completed project. It was a vibrant, active construction site, a living laboratory where Inca builders were pushing the limits of their capabilities. The stones were still arriving, the walls were still rising when history intervened. The Spanish conquest brought a sudden and definitive end to this work. The workers laid down their tools, the ropes went slack, and the great stones were left where they rested, silent witnesses to the abrupt end of an era. They are more than just abandoned rocks. They are a physical timeline of an empire's final, unfinished experiment in stone, a project whose ultimate vision we can only guess at, forever suspended in the high mountain air. The scattered granite blocks at Ollantaytambo are a ghostly procession halted in mid-step. Each one is a testament to an engineering process of remarkable sophistication. To move a 50-ton block across a river and up a mountainside required more than just muscle. It demanded a deep, intuitive understanding of physics. The Inca did not use the wheel or draft animals. Their entire system was built around human power, cleverly amplified. They constructed vast earthen ramps, packing soil and stone into sturdy causeways that could bear the immense weight. They likely used log rollers and ropes made from hardy local grasses, with teams of workers coordinating their pulls with rhythmic precision. The surfaces of the abandoned blocks themselves tell another part of the story. They were not left as rough quarry stone. Many show evidence of being partially shaped, their faces pecked and ground with stone tools to begin the process of fitting them into the grand, interlocking puzzle of the fortress walls. This was a living, breathing operation, a continuous flow of material and labor that was the lifeblood of the empire's expansion. Then that flow was severed. The arrival of Spanish forces in the 16th century did not just stop work on a single fortress. It dismantled the entire system that made such construction possible. The social hierarchy that organized the labor, the master builders who held the knowledge of ramp angles and stone dressing, the religious beliefs that motivated such colossal efforts, all of it was profoundly disrupted within a generation. This sudden termination offers us a rare and sobering clarity. Because the work stopped so abruptly, we are left with a perfectly preserved snapshot of Inca engineering in its pure operational state. There was no slow decline or gradual adaptation. The stones are exactly as they were left, allowing us to see the methods without the blur of later changes. They stand as a silent, poignant memorial to a world of American technological achievement whose trajectory was cut short, leaving us to wonder what monumental heights it might have reached if its story had been allowed to reach its intended conclusion. These faint scars on the stone are a forgotten language of labor waiting to be read. Every pit and groove left by an ancient tool is a fossilized moment of human effort, a direct line back to the artisan who stood there thousands of years ago. At a place like Ollantaytambo, the surfaces of the abandoned granite blocks are not smooth. They are covered in a distinctive pattern of precise pitting, a texture created by teams of workers striking the stone repeatedly with heavy stone hammers. This is not random damage. The specific shape and depth of each mark tells an expert eye exactly what kind of tool was used, the angle at which it was held, and the amount of force behind each swing. By mapping the direction of these grooves, archaeologists can trace the very sequence of work, following the invisible path a worker's hands took across the surface of the monolith. This micro-level analysis reveals something deeply human. It allows us to distinguish between different work crews on the same project. One team might have left shallower, more careful marks, suggesting a methodical, experienced approach. Another might have worked with deeper, more forceful blows, perhaps a younger crew relying on raw strength. This turns a silent stone wall into a narrative of daily life, a story of teamwork, skill, and individual variation. We can even identify moments of experimentation. A cluster of unusual tool marks in one corner might be the evidence of a master artisan testing a new technique, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with the tools of the era. This tangible connection to the individual worker transforms our understanding. We are no longer just looking at a massive fortress, but at the collective effort of countless known individuals, each leaving their own unique signature in the stone for us to discover millennia later. That single tool mark left by a worker is a direct connection to the immense economic engine that made such labor possible. Every unfinished monument represents a colossal investment, a massive sunk cost of food, materials, and human organization that a society ultimately decided to walk away from. These sites are more than just engineering diagrams. They are balance sheets written in stone, offering us a rare window into the ancient economy. Think of the logistics behind a single project. Feeding thousands of workers required a steady, immense flow of resources. For the workers carving the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, this meant vast shipments of bread, beer, fish, and vegetables, all transported along the Nile and paid for by the state treasury. The raw materials themselves were a huge expense. Quarrying the granite required stone tools that wore down and needed constant replacement, while the copper for the tubular drills at the Serapeum represented a significant outlay of mined and smelted metal. These projects were funded either directly by the state through taxation of grain and labor, or by powerful religious institutions with their own vast land holdings. An abandoned project, therefore, is a clear economic signal. It tells us that the cost, whether financial, social, or political, finally outweighed the perceived benefit. A pharaoh's treasury might have been depleted by years of grand construction, leaving no funds to continue. The populace, burdened by heavy taxes and labor demands, might have reached a breaking point, their discontent threatening the stability of the kingdom. Or a more pressing emergency, like a looming military conflict or a widespread famine, could have forced a sudden and total reallocation of all available resources away from monument building and toward immediate survival. The silent stones of an abandoned site, therefore, speak a sobering language of real-world pressures. They show us that behind the grandeur and the spiritual ambition lay hard economic realities, where the dream of eternal glory could be abruptly cancelled by an empty granary or the distant drumbeat of war. That hidden fracture in the Aswan obelisk was a catastrophic lesson in material science, a risk ancient engineers faced with every project. They were masterful empiricists, learning through direct, hands-on experimentation, but they worked without the deep understanding of internal geology we have today. A stone might look perfect on the surface, yet conceal a hidden plane of weakness within. The moment a chisel or a heavy pounder struck in just the wrong place, that hidden flaw could propagate into a crack that doomed the entire monolith. This was a constant, high-stakes gamble. They were not just shaping stone, they were learning its hidden language, its breaking points, and its unique character, one colossal block at a time. This learning process is etched into the very floors of quarries across the world. Early attempts at monument building often used the most readily available local stone, even if it was of inferior quality or prone to shattering. The initial results were likely a series of frustrating failures, with blocks cracking during shaping or splitting apart during transport. Over generations, this hard-won knowledge guided them to seek out superior materials, even if it meant establishing quarries miles away and creating complex logistics networks. The journey from using a soft, local limestone to importing hard granite or basalt for critical components marks a clear evolution in their practical understanding of material properties. Every abandoned rough-out, every cracked block left in a quarry is a fossilized research and development experiment. They represent a costly investment of labor and time that ultimately advanced their collective knowledge. These silent stones are the ancient world's laboratory notes, documenting a millennia-long dialogue between human ambition and the unyielding, unpredictable nature of the earth itself. A monument left incomplete can be a powerful declaration in stone, a message that transcends engineering. While we often search for practical reasons a project halted, the true story can reside in the realm of belief and symbolism. In certain traditions, a structure intentionally left unfinished was not a mark of failure, but a profound theological statement. It could represent the eternal, ongoing work of a deity, a creation too vast for mortal hands to ever truly complete. This concept transforms an abandoned site into a permanent acknowledgement of human limitation in the face of the divine, a deliberate imperfection honoring a perfect creator. In stark contrast, other societies might view a ruler's unfinished tomb as the ultimate curse, a public declaration that their legacy was not worthy of completion. This layers these places with a potent, often somber, political meaning. The careful, ritual backfilling of the Göbekli Tepe complex stands as a perfect example of this symbolic intent. This was not an act of giving up, but one of profound reverence and closure. The community did not abandon their sacred space, they ceremonially returned it to the earth, preserving it for eternity, and perhaps signaling an end to an entire spiritual era. This forces us to ask a fundamental question when we stand before any unfinished monument. Are we looking at a project that failed, or one that succeeded in its primary goal by remaining forever in progress? The stones themselves do not announce the answer. We must listen to the cultural whispers, the artistic motifs, and the historical context to understand whether the silence we perceive is one of defeat or of deliberate, sacred meaning. This layer of interpretation reminds us that these sites were never just exercises in moving weight. They were conversations with the gods, assertions of power, and reflections on the very nature of existence, frozen in a state that challenges us to decipher their final, unspoken word. The silent Moai of Easter Island stand as more than just abandoned statues. They are a stark monument to a conversation between human ambition and the limits of the natural world. The very act of creating and transporting these giants required immense quantities of timber for rollers, levers, and scaffolding. Generation after generation, the island's forests were cleared to feed this cultural drive. But the trees were not just fuel for construction, they were the foundation of the entire ecosystem. Their loss triggered a cascade of consequences, from severe soil erosion that stripped away fertile land to a decline in the wild food sources that had once supplemented their diet. The society that had directed all its energy toward raising stone giants found itself facing a stark new reality, one of crop failure and resource scarcity. In this new world, the grand project of statue building became not just impractical, but impossible. The community's focus necessarily shifted from spiritual monuments to immediate survival, leaving the Moai in the quarry as a permanent lesson in the delicate balance between a culture's dreams and the environment that supports them. This pattern extends far beyond a single island. In arid regions, a prolonged drought could devastate the heart of an empire. The vast workforces that built pyramids and temples required a reliable supply of food and fresh water, resources sustained by predictable rainy seasons and river floods. A shift in climate recorded in ancient ice cores and sediment layers could mean years of failing harvests. The grain stores that fed thousands of laborers would slowly empty, and the water channels that supplied a city would run dry. An unfinished monument, its construction halted at a specific date, becomes a crucial piece of evidence in this ancient puzzle. By correlating that abandonment with climate data, we can see a direct link between environmental change and the stalling of human enterprise. These sites are not just engineering failures, they are historical proxies for environmental stress. They offer us a profound, long view of sustainability, reminding us that the greatest challenge for any civilization, ancient or modern, has always been its relationship with the world it depends upon. A single bad omen could silence the hammers of an entire workforce. In a world where the gods were believed to speak through the flight of birds, the patterns of animal entrails, or the sudden fury of a storm, the spiritual dimensions of a construction site were as critical as its foundation trenches. A project blessed by favorable signs could proceed with confidence, its workers assured of divine favor. But a sequence of unexplained accidents, a prophetic dream interpreted as a warning, or an eclipse on the day a cornerstone was laid could be seen as a message of profound disfavor. In such cases, the most rational response for an ancient community was not to press on, but to ritually abandon the place. The site itself might be declared unclean, a dwelling place for angry spirits, or a location that had offended a deity. The immense resources already invested, the cut stones and prepared timbers, could not simply be reused for another purpose. Often, they were left in place or ritually buried, their spiritual contamination making them unfit for any other project. A new location would be chosen, one deemed pure through ceremony and divination, and the entire colossal effort would begin again from scratch. While we cannot dig up a forgotten omen or hold a 2,000-year-old superstition in our hands, the archaeological record holds silent testimonies to these powerful beliefs. The clearest evidence is the well-funded, politically secure project that is suddenly and completely abandoned at its peak, with no sign of invasion, economic collapse, or royal succession crisis. There is no cracked obelisk, no fallen king, just a site frozen in time, its tools laid down in an orderly fashion as if the workers expected to return the next day, but never did. These places force us to remember that the minds of the ancient engineers were not ruled by physics and logistics alone. Their world was alive with meaning and unseen forces, where a spiritual interpretation of a random event could override all practical considerations, leaving behind a monument not to a failure of engineering, but to the overwhelming power of belief. This reverse engineering process is like finding a master blueprint, one that was never meant to be seen. An unfinished monument preserves the construction sequence exactly as the builders left it, revealing their priorities and their precise workflow. At a pyramid site, for instance, the evidence is starkly clear. The inner chambers and the king's burial vault were always the first priority, sealed deep within the core structure long before the outer layers rose toward the sky. This tells us that securing the pharaoh's eternal journey was the non-negotiable first step, the entire spiritual purpose of the project. The massive superstructure, the smooth white casing stones, were the final magnificent shell. By examining an abandoned pyramid, we see this sequence frozen, allowing us to trace the exact architectural timeline from the first foundation trench to the intended apex. This same principle applies in the megalithic quarries. Did the builders fully sculpt a statue, polishing every detail before attempting to move it? Or did they rough out the shape in the quarry to reduce its weight for transport, saving the fine detail work for the final location? The unfinished Moai of Rono Raraku give us the definitive answer. They were carved almost to completion while still attached to the bedrock, with only their backs left connected. This reveals a critical logistical choice, one that minimized the risk of damaging a fragile, fully finished statue during its difficult journey. Each of these paused projects acts as a controlled experiment. They let us test our modern theories against the cold, hard evidence of stone. Was this ramp used for dragging blocks or for hauling construction fill? The answer is right there, preserved in the compacted soil and abandoned tools. This moves our understanding out of the realm of pure speculation and into a more solid, evidence-based reconstruction of the past, giving us an instruction manual for the ancient world, written not on papyrus but in the very earth and stone. The silent quarries and half-built walls speak not only of engineering but of the immense human societies that powered them. To move 1,000-ton stone, you need more than ropes and ramps. You need an entire civilization organized around a single goal. The layout of these ancient construction sites is a blueprint of that social order. Just outside the shadow of a rising pyramid, archaeologists often find the remains of sprawling settlements, complete with orderly barracks, massive bakeries capable of feeding thousands, and workshops for sharpening and storing tools. These are not the temporary camps of a desperate workforce, but the planned communities of a permanent, organized operation. So who were the people living in these cities of labor? The evidence paints a complex picture that challenges old assumptions. In Egypt, the village of Deir el-Medina, home to the artisans who built the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, reveals a community of highly skilled, literate craftsmen. They received regular wages in the form of food, beer, and housing, and had the authority to go on strike when those payments were delayed. This was not the work of a mindless, oppressed mass. Yet in other empires, large-scale projects were undoubtedly fueled by conscripted labor, a form of taxation where citizens contributed a portion of their year to state works. The sudden abandonment of a project freezes this social engine in place, allowing us to see how it stopped. Was the workforce disbanded in an orderly manner, with tools stored and pathways cleared? Or does the site show signs of a rapid, unplanned departure, with tools dropped mid-task and personal belongings left behind? The answer tells us whether the project ended with a royal decree or in a moment of panic and flight. Understanding this human element is the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. It moves us beyond the stones to the people, the thousands of hands and minds whose collective effort, whether voluntary or compelled, stands as one of humanity's most enduring experiments in what we can achieve together. These parallel experiments in stone offer a clear window into ancient problem-solving. When we place the quarries of Aswan beside the slopes of Rono Raraku, we witness two brilliant cultures arriving at entirely different answers to the same fundamental question: how do you move a mountain? The Egyptians operated with the full might of a state-level apparatus. Their projects were funded by a pharaoh's treasury and managed by a permanent, specialized bureaucracy. This allowed for the mass production of copper chisels and the organization of thousands of workers into coordinated shifts. Their method for moving an obelisk was a feat of systematic leverage, relying on immense wooden sledges, lubricated pathways, and teams pulling in unison on precisely woven ropes. It was engineering as an act of centralized control. On the other side of the world, the Easter Islanders worked within a more community-based framework. Their society was organized around clan groups, not an all-powerful king. Their tools were not smelted metal, but hardened stone, crafted from the very material they were shaping. Their proposed solution for moving the Moai was arguably more dynamic, a rhythmic, rocking motion that made the statue appear to walk. This was not a system of commands from a central authority. but a technique requiring intimate, collective rhythm and a deep, shared understanding of balance. The unfinished sites are the perfect laboratory for this comparison because they are pristine. A finished Egyptian temple hides the ramps and workshops, while a Moai standing on its platform gives no hint of its difficult journey. But the quarry at Aswan, with its abandoned obelisk still in its trench, and the transport roads of Easter Island, littered with fallen statues, preserve the methods in their raw, operational state. They show us that technology is not a linear path, but a branching tree. Faced with a similar challenge of weight and distance, human ingenuity blossomed in two distinct directions, shaped by the resources, beliefs, and social structures of the people who dared to think big. Our modern tools are now listening to whispers in the stone that were once completely silent. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses deep into the earth, revealing the ghostly outlines of foundations and worker camps that have been buried for millennia. LiDAR technology, which uses laser light to map terrain from the air, strips away dense jungle canopy to expose ancient processional roads and hidden quarries we never knew existed. At a site like the unfinished obelisk, high-resolution 3D scanning captures every single tool mark and fracture with a degree of accuracy that is almost unreal. This digital model is more than a simple picture. It becomes a virtual laboratory. Researchers can calculate the exact volume of stone that was painstakingly pounded away, allowing for astonishingly precise estimates of the millions of man-hours invested before the crack appeared. Suddenly, that single abandoned monument becomes a detailed data set on ancient labor and resource management. We are no longer just looking at a giant rock. We are analyzing a frozen industrial operation. Drone photography offers a perspective the original builders themselves never had. A bird's-eye view that shows the grand layout of an entire workshop, from the quarry's edge to the beginning of a transport ramp. This new toolkit transforms these places. We are not just observing ruins, we are conducting a forensic analysis of ancient ambition, using technologies that read the landscape like a book, extracting profound new stories from stones that have kept their secrets for thousands of years. This question of completion is a profound ethical crossroads. We now possess the engineering capability to hypothetically raise the unfinished obelisk or finally transport the colossal stone at Baalbek. The challenge is intellectually seductive, a chance to close a historical loop and witness a true ancient wonder brought to life. Yet, the overwhelming consensus among those who study and protect these places is a resounding no. To finish their work would be to destroy the very thing that makes them priceless. Their immense value is not in what they were meant to be, but in what they are, a perfect snapshot of arrested development. The moment we place a modern crane over the Aswan quarry or carve new grooves to free the Lebanese giant, we irrevocably erase the original evidence. Those faint tool marks left by dolerite pounders, the specific fracture that halted all progress, the compacted earth of a ramp never dismantled, all of it would be lost beneath contemporary machinery and well-intentioned effort. We would be replacing an authentic, ancient workshop with a modern reconstruction, silencing the very story the stones have been telling for thousands of years. These sites are not failed projects waiting for a savior. They are permanent memorials to ambition itself, preserving not just a vision of grandeur, but also the tangible evidence of human limitation. Their power lies in their suspended state, a laboratory where we can still observe the methods, the mistakes, and the moment everything stopped. Their incomplete form is their most important lesson, reminding us that the journey of discovery is often more revealing than any destination we could imagine for them. The cracked obelisk in Aswan and the scattered Moai on Easter Island are more than ruins. They are powerful testaments to human ambition, ingenuity, and fallibility. These places are not failures. They are paused experiments, each one a vital chapter in the long story of our attempt to shape the world. Every abandoned quarry and half-built wall teaches us something profound about forgotten technologies, immense economic pressures, and the delicate relationship between a society and its environment. They reveal the unpredictable currents of history, showing us that the past was a dynamic place of trial and error, not a static museum exhibit. As we continue to study these silent teachers with ever-advancing tools, we gain a deeper understanding of our ancestors. But more than that, we gain a humbling perspective on our own modern endeavors. The challenges we face today in our own ambitious projects are echoes of those ancient dialogues with the limits of our world. Let these stones inspire you to look closer at the world's ancient wonders. Their greatest secrets are not always in the polished, finished facade, but often in the raw, honest story of what was left undone. If this journey into the past has captivated you, we would love to hear which unfinished monument intrigues you most in the comments below, and subscribe for more explorations into history's deepest